The problems facing migrant workers have been brought to the forefront again following the gruesome death of 2 Bangladeshi workers at a construction site in Bangsar, Kuala Lumpur on 8 March. The 2 Bangladeshi workers were crushed to death by a ton of concrete bricks that fell from the 22nd floor of the almost completed UOA Bangsar Tower after a crane cable snapped. The site is just a stone's throw away from Malaysiakini office in Bangsar Utama. According to eyewitnesses of the Sunday afternoon accident, both bodies were smashed beyond recognition. One of them was also decapitated. One of those killed, named Hassan, had been employed by UOA Holdings in Berhad for 10 years. The other, Ali, had been employed by Mengke Constructions in Berhad for 5 years. Both were documented workers with work permits. Incidents like this one are not uncommon in the country, as Malaysiakini finds out after contacting various migrants' rights activists and organizations. All remarked that migrant workers in Malaysia were susceptible to all forms of exploitation, as well as safety and health hazards, with little chance of compensation in cases of injury or death, and that whatever forms of compensation were often menial.
Actually, Malaysia, we can give our government credit for the fact that there are very comprehensive laws pertaining to employees. I suppose thanks to the work of MTUC and other NGOs, laws are very comprehensive. Sad to say, the enforcement leaves much to be desired. The Labour Department doesn't appear to have been conscientized to the fact that migrant workers contribute a great deal to the Malaysian economy. The Labour Department doesn't appear to appreciate the fact that these are not commodities but human beings. And therefore, when migrant workers seek to lodge a complaint before the Labour Department, often they're given a big runaround. The Labour Department doesn't appear to be aware of the fact that for them to make it to the doorstep of the Labour Department is in itself a big achievement, because of the fact that they're brought into this country, most of whom don't even speak the language. Put ourselves in a position like, for example, if we're in Japan. Everything is written in Japanese. Everybody speaks Japanese. Nobody speaks your own language. You're in complete isolation. By the time you can ventilate your story and get it heard by some Malaysian who cares about it and helps you to take you to the right form of to the right avenue for redress, by the time you make it to the doorstep, it takes a long time. So employers who employ migrant workers or even regular Malaysian workers, there is no enforcement as to whether or not they are doing the needful in terms of registering, obtaining insurance for them, and even forming a committee for occupational safety and health. There's no enforcement on any of these issues. The problem is when it's divided in this sense. For example, they have to be members of a particular trade union based in that particular industry. Now, in that particular industry, let's just take a company, like the company which you said this accident has just taken place in. That employer may have migrant workers from 4 different countries. Okay, so there will be those who speak Bengali, there will be those who speak Tamil, and perhaps the Indonesians. Then of course there are the locals. Now, because of the fact that they are all so diverse, there's a great deal of difficulty in unifying them. The Malaysians is against the foreigners, and the foreigners within themselves. Now, so at the end of the day, one, say, Bangladeshi worker in that particular employer at that particular place of employment may not be able to garner enough support from enough people within his union to even think about pushing his issues forward. So he becomes really very, I would say his rights seem to become very contracted because he's just one voice. And there's always the fear that I'm going to be out of here at the end of this year. My permit is only up till next February. So how much can I really do within this time? There's always the threat of their work permit being terminated or not being renewed. So they just don't see the point of joining a union. The system seems to be rigged against them. joining unions. Generally, as with any other complaint before the Labour Department, the law unfortunately requires the employer to notify the department that there's been an accident. Okay? Now, which employer is going to actually do that? So as long as the employer doesn't, it seems to stop just there. So therefore now what we have suggested to migrant workers in this position is for them to notify the department and copy the letter to the employer. Even then, everything revolves around whether the department officer takes the initiative to make the necessary inquiries and follow up on the case. Ideally, the Labour Department should demand an explanation from the employer, make inquiries as to the accident. Industrial accidents should be reported. I'm sure that construction sites are among the listed sectors which are supposed to have a safety and health officer and who are supposed to report as soon as an industrial accident takes place. Now, in the absence of that, they can be fined. They can be prosecuted and fined. The fine isn't very much. It is 10,000. So for 2 offences of 2 deaths unreported, what is 20,000 to a developer?
There are some rights that are guaranteed for all workers, particularly labour rights. Under the Labour Law and the Industrial Relations Act, they have access to the same rights. But as a foreign worker, these rights are either determined or taken away by the work permit and their status in the country. Yeah. So if we take the example of the 2 Bangladeshi workers who died in the construction site, construction workers have a big problem. One is most of them are subcontracted and are undocumented. And if they are undocumented, they do not have any kind of right to any compensation, access to treatment. There is no rights at all. Again, if we look at the incident that has happened, an accident at workplace, the worker is covered by, the migrant worker is covered by the Workmen's Compensation Scheme and not the Social Security Scheme. So the Workmen's Compensation Scheme is archaic, and therefore you will see a lot of weaknesses in it. The maximum for death is 18,000, and then there's a lot of deductions that can happen from sending the body back and so forth. At the end of the day, it's a difficult process for claim. Where workers have an accident, again, they can only access treatment if the employer makes a report. Now, the employers refuse to make a report, because if they do make a report, then the Occupational Safety Health Department under the Human Resources Ministry will investigate and see whether the workplace is safe or not. So, employers want to run away, they will not make a report. They know that the migrant worker cannot go and make a report because he has got no passport. And so, his rights get denied further. So if we look in this aspect, there is very, 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 very little rights they can enjoy. And if this is guaranteed in the law, it is taken away by the work permit status.